Listen up!
Everyone live from CNN London. I'm Hala Barani. Tonight, what is the right way to deal with coronavirus? As Italy copes with a total lockdown, I will speak to the country's deputy health minister and the World Health Organization in just the next few minutes. Then CNN is live on the Greek-Turkish border, where Greek guards are fighting what they call Turkey's dirty tactics. And desperate migrants are caught in the middle, as usual. And Super Tuesday Part 2 in the United States, Bernie Sanders is trying to make a stand in Michigan again, and 5 other states are up for grabs today. We will have a live report from the battleground states of America. As the coronavirus spreads, governments are taking some extreme measures to stop it in its tracks. That's what we're seeing in Italy. As we speak, the entire country is under a total lockdown. All of the former red zone travel restrictions now apply everywhere throughout the country. Public events are canceled, schools and businesses are closed, and people are waiting in very long lines to stock up on groceries. But is this unprecedented step going to work? I'm going to be speaking with the Deputy Health Minister in just a moment, the Deputy Health Minister of Italy. First, let's go to Ben Wiedemann. He is in Bologna for us. Talk to us a little bit about what this lockdown feels like, looks like for ordinary citizens in Italy.
Hala, I think we need to qualify total lockdown because, as you can see from behind me, it's not. It is a series of measures aimed at limiting people gathering. So public gatherings are forbidden. Private and public sporting events are forbidden. Schools and universities will be closed until the 3rd of October. It is 6 p.m. here in Bologna. At this moment, all bars and restaurants must be closed. However, we were going around speaking to shopkeepers. Shops don't really have clear guidance, and they say they will operate as much as possible normally until they receive some sort of directives from the government. The government has taken a series of measures, however, to try to limit the movement of people. For instance, in central Italy, 48 people were reported to the police for attending a funeral. Funerals, as well as weddings and baptisms, have been banned because they are events where people gather. Now, by and large, almost everyone we spoke to a lot of people here today in Bologna, they were supportive of these latest measures. It's questionable how many people will actually abide by them. One woman told us that even though Italy's a democracy, the country should follow the example of China, a dictatorship, where the government imposed very harsh measures. And some politicians here are calling for even harsher measures, the closure of all stores, restaurants and bars, just leaving supermarkets open so people can at least buy food to eat. Hala?
Now, not a total lockdown, but the measures you described are indeed extreme. Other countries, including the UK, are saying that they won't be going that far, at least not yet. Certainly they don't have the same number of cases, but where you are right now, just give our viewers a sense of what it would normally be like where you are and what it is like right now, just past 6 p.m. Italy time.
This is the main piazza in Bologna. I will step out of view and have Richard Harlow, our cameraman, sort of pan around. Normally at this time, this is the heart of Bologna. There would be many people here, perhaps going to get an after-work drink, to meet with friends, to go to restaurants. People normally here eat around 8 p.m. They won't be able to, in the restaurants and whatnot, they won't be able to do that this evening. But nonetheless, people are gathered around. You don't really get a feeling that there's a sense of panic. I think there is an appreciation that now is the time for extraordinary measures. This really is the largest crisis Italy has faced since the Second World War, but people here tend to approach these things calmly. There's been no rush for toilet paper. People are going out to buy supplies, but you don't really get a sense. of panic here. Hala?
All right. Well, good for them. Ben Wiedemann live in Bologna, because there's literally no toilet paper left in my London neighborhood for some reason. I'll be speaking to the Italian Deputy Health Minister in just a moment. But first, this just into CNN. The governor of New York is deploying the National Guard to help contain what he calls a significant coronavirus outbreak. The cluster of cases is in New Rochelle, just outside New York City. CNN's Bryn.
What did she just say?
For some reason. I'll be speaking to the Italian Deputy Health Minister in just a moment. But first, this just into CNN. The governor of New York is deploying the National Guard. The governor of New York is deploying the National Guard to The governor of New York is deploying the National Guard to help contain what he calls a significant coronavirus outbreak. National Guard to help contain what he calls a significant coronavirus outbreak. The cluster of cases is in New Rochelle, just outside New York City. CNN's Bryn joins me now from New York with more. What does it mean that the National Guard is now being utilized and deployed? National Guard is now being utilized and deployed. Mean that the National Guard is now being utilized and deployed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a significant step that the governor is taking, and he said in a news conference a short time ago, this is a matter of life and death. Now, keep in mind the bigger picture. There's 170 cases of coronavirus in New York State. 108 of them are in Westchester County, and most of those are in New Rochelle. This one town, if you remember a couple weeks ago, where New York had one of its first positive tests come back of an attorney who lives in New Rochelle and commuted to New York City often for work. This is where that is happening. Okay, so the governor is basically calling it a containment area, a mile radius within this. Calling it a containment area, a mile radius within this town. The National Guard is going to come in and help deliver food to people who live in that town. They're going to help wipe down public places. And basically, they're just trying to shut down any big gatherings, temples, churches, places of worship, schools are going to be closed. Some businesses are going to be closed. The governor says you can't really contain people, right? People are going to be allowed to leave their town, but essentially wanting to shut down this area to help contain this virus. Again, a drastic move, but it's one the governor says he feels he had to make at the drastic move, but it's one the governor says he feels he had to make at drastic move, but it's one the governor says he feels he had to make at the advice of public health officials.
And is this in an effort to sort of police movement in and out of this zone? How do they enforce this restriction zone?
Again, he said that he can't really tell people not to leave this zone. He can't contain people. It has to be more about the gatherings. So that's the effort right there, is to just shut down basically where people could go to in this town in order to try to keep it within this town's borders. But of course, it's not just this town.
They're trying to confine it. They're trying to minimize the damage of human carnage. They're trying to contain it, is what they're trying to do. And that's the part that our chief and commander obviously does not recognize or don't believe. And I don't know what it's going to take to get him to acknowledge that the wolf is no longer at the gate, but he's inside the chicken coop. And he's fixing to take out a great deal of the hens pertaining to the wolf or the fox being inside the chicken coop. The wolf representing the demon that has been unleashed upon society. Why we cannot get our chief and commander to acknowledge the seriousness of this is still absolutely mind-boggling to me. I realize that we have to be cautious in not starting a panic as far as people being overly cautious. People can overemphasize upon to a problem to the point that they create a problem worse than the problem. That is not the case here. This thing is lethal. It would be the same thing if a massive Category 4 or 5 hurricane was fixing to drop in on Florida and wipe Florida off the map. What will the governor and what will various people connected with FEMA and health experts, what will they advise the people and the citizens of Florida to do if they know that a hurricane is fixing to hit? They tell them to flee. Get out of that area. Go to upper states. Find a hotel somewhere. Get out of the coastal lining areas. That's what they do. Donald Trump is not treating this as a hurricane. Donald Trump is not treating this as a tornado. Donald Trump is not treating this as an oncoming enemy pertaining to people's lives being at risk here. And I don't know why that he cannot understand that. And don't get me wrong at all. Because within the first 24 hours after I seen this being led by the Holy Spirit, what was going on the second week of January over in China after they finally exposed it to the general public that they was having a major health crisis over there, I hesitated. I repeat, I hesitated for 24 hours in not putting this out to the general public pertaining to my viewers because of the episode that had happened in my life right up the road here in Martin, Tennessee, pertaining to falsifying files, which basically means starting a panic if you was inside of a theater and you pulled down the alarm or you started crying out, fire, 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 and there was no fire, that it has the same implications as a terrorist type act, because, or that's how they tried to defy it up here in Weakley County, up here with Tommy Moore. They tried to defy it as a terrorist type act, once more towards trying to stain me or brand me as me being the bad guy, like I'm some sort of a homegrown terrorist. This movement of resistance that began in my life did not just begin yesterday or the day before yesterday or since I come back here in 2014 trying to rejuvenate my life around my brother's life and in this community. This resistance movement began all the way back to 1989, whenever I had various people around here that refused to acknowledge what I was telling them as it being the truth, pertaining to the opening of the seals, pertaining to the two witnesses, pertaining to the book of Daniel, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. We had people that was going out of their way towards falsifying their implications towards me by saying, oh, this is a celebrity stunt. Jubby's just doing this to try to draw attention to himself. That was at the beginning processes of this ministry stepping out into the eyes of the general public. In the meantime, I lost jobs. In the meantime, I was banned from a radio station from putting out my message to the general public. In the meantime, I had various churches that banned me, that told me that I was welcome based upon my message. It wasn't based upon the color of my hair. It wasn't based upon the color of my skin. It wasn't based upon me being necessarily a criminal at large, but it was based upon a group of people that didn't like the message coming from the messenger. And they was going to try their darndest to destroy the messenger by thinking that they was going to destroy the message. I repeat, they was going to do their darndest to destroy the messenger, hoping that they would destroy the message. I didn't write the book of Revelations. It chose me. I did not choose it. I keep trying to tell people that around here in this particular area, and they're still dumbfounded. It's almost like I'm speaking to a bunch of zombies. Well, what's fixing to come down the pike, I think, is fixing to wake them up. If this is hitting this hard in the New York area district towards the governor having to put out National Guard for extra security, it's just a matter of time coming near a neighborhood near you that this is going to be massive here in the United States. And I hoped and I prayed within the first 24 hours, God, please let me be wrong about this. But God instilled to me, he said, Dennis, I want you to put this message out to the general public that this is serious. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't fabricated. This isn't some sort of fabrication or ideology. This is the real deal. And of course, we've seen what happened to China. Now we're seeing what has happened to other parts of the country towards them shutting down 60 million people. And now the governor of the state of New York City has issued out the National Guard. So what we're seeing is this thing escalating. What we're seeing is this thing evolving. What we're seeing is this thing getting worse. That's the reason why I put out the message that I put out yesterday pertaining to it needs to be federally mandated of some sort of preparation, emergency preparedness, just in case it does happen to hit in your neighborhood. Naturally, we're going to pray that it don't. But it's obvious that this is occurring. This isn't some sort of a fabrication of somebody's imagination. This isn't Hollywood. This is the real deal. There's people getting deathly sick. There's people dying of this thing. And whenever, read this. This cannot be false information because if it was, this news agency would be sued. New York deploying National Guard to contain virus cluster. And that's how it's gonna become. And it will eventually come into your rural areas. You know, I've thought about the YMCA. And also the day that I got banded from this place up here in Union City because I thought that I was helping and I thought that I went about it in the right way towards getting permission from this gastro place up here in Union City. That same day, I actually joined Weight Watchers in Union City. That's costing me a little bit of money every month just to become Weight Watchers towards once more recognizing the severity of being overweight, that instead of me allowing for that to bring me down even further of another stumbling block, another event that happened in my life, rather than me putting my tail between my legs and saying, wow, I've been defeated again, hadn't I? I run into another brick wall again, hadn't I? No. God led me down the road, and within a matter of an hour, I was making a decision towards joining Weight Watchers. Immediately. After that incident happened to me up here in Union City pertaining to the gastro place. Immediately. I don't know what it's going to take to humble the American people's lives in them recognizing that they're not invincible. None of us is invincible. Okay? I don't know what it's going to take to convince the American people's lives that the message that I have devoted my solely over half of my life towards is not something that was created in my mind pertaining to a mental illness. It's not something that I created in my mind pertaining to me wanting to be subjected to all this embarrassment and all this ridiculing and all this rejection and all this demonizing and dehumanizing. Nobody, I repeat, nobody wants to go through that. Nobody. But yet now, I'm still being rejected here in the community towards this message being authentic. So let whatever happens to these people, let it happen to them because they have been forewarned. They have been forewarned going all the way back to The year 205, whenever I put out a message to the 43rd President of the United States, a bloody road ahead, pertaining to mass hysteria and also the opening of the second seal, combining both of them together, let whatever happens to them, because, you know, I've learned that you cannot help people who are not willing to help themselves. And if they are that far in left field to the point that they are that deceived, that bamboozled, that much brainwashed, in not recognizing, as God is speaking to the 7 churches then, He's speaking to the 7 churches today to repent, or I will come unto thee, and I will throw thee off into great tribulation. I will throw thee off into a great sickbed. If people can't recognize the words of read towards them being real, then they're the ones with the problem, not God, and not God's messengers that keeps trying to put out the message, even though they don't like the message, even though they have tried everything in the world to destroy the messenger because they didn't like the message. I'm still putting out the message. Thank God for social media platforms to the point that now I don't have to go from church door to church door, from person to person, from place to place. Now I can do it with this type of ingenuity, with this type of technology. Thank God that God has allowed for this technology now to come into my existence, towards me recognizing the importance of being able to use it for a tool for the glory of God. Not a tool for the glory of Satan. Not the tool for the glory of man. Not the tool for the glory of politics. Not the tool for the glory of corruption. But the tool of working with and for a holy, righteous, divine God. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of the Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth. I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up. But whenever you start having these development moments to where you're having governors that's recognizing the severity of this to the point that now they're deploying National Guard, you're now starting to wake up to the fragrancy of reality. And I would tell the Coopers that, I would tell the Halls that, I would tell the Mackrights that, I would tell the Nortons that, I would tell the Nelsons that, I would tell the Jacobses that, I would tell the Neils that, I would tell the Tommy Moores that, I would tell the Randy Brundridges that, I would tell the Willises that, I would tell the Robinsons that, I would tell the Staggses that, I would tell the Bakers that, I would tell the Wallaces that, I would tell the Ramseys that, I would tell all these people that have spent their lives in trying to stop this message, this divine message of getting forth. I would tell them this as they're fixing to take their last, final, very dying breath. You tried to stop something that was real. You tried to stop something that was anointed by God. And even God himself said through the teachings of Jesus that it would have been easier for all of heaven and for all of earth to pass than for one jot or one tittle of the word thy God to fail. And if it was written in stone for it to appear and for it to occur, then let the will of God be done. Not the will of man, but the will of God. And that's the part around here that just never did quite sink in with the elderly people, the people now that are more subject to this coronavirus disease that is now creeping and slipping and advancing and evolving and growing in leaps and bounds here in America. Just like David Nelson. Not David Nelson, David Jacobs, basically on his dying bed. Dickie Jacobs, his brother, looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, Jubby, I wish now that we would have supported you. I wish now that we would have believed in you and got in behind your message. David Jacobs is no longer with us. He's passed on. And his works that he was involved in have passed on with him. And I feel so sorry for various people around here that I think had a gut feeling that what the individual was doing and what he was preaching and telling people, the individual that's talking to you right now, the individual that you can see part of my face right now, I think a lot of people knew. They had a gut feeling that what I was doing was real. But for some reason, they didn't want to play a part in helping Jubby sustain the message. I don't know if they just felt like that they wanted me to die a death, a slow, misery, agonizing death, the same as others has done before me. Or if they really and truly thought that I was trying to bamboozle them towards lying to them, towards it being some sort of a hoax. Or if they was just so dead set that they didn't like my family because of various conditions that happened in and on the farm, not only in my biological father's life, but also in his father's life and in his father's life, going all the way back to whenever we owned a limb store down here, and we was issuing out medicated drugs to the countryside and birthing babies into the world and trying to do our best to establish a good, sound neighborhood in this area. I don't know what it was pertaining to the Ridgway family, and to be quite honest with you, don't care. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, he was sick. Something was wrong with him. You can call it a tumor if you want to, because that's basically what he died of, was an aneurysm, a tumor in his head. But as far as I'm concerned, Tommy Thomas, and other people that supposedly is in the judicial department towards law enforcement agencies around in this area are just as sick, if not sicker than he was. These people that sat back and allowed to see my dad mistreat his family the way that they did without raising a red flag to it and without trying to stop it, they'll give an account for not so much of what they done, but what they didn't do that they know that they should have intervened towards doing. Because now they have become part of the event and the abusiveness that went on back years ago. They'll stand and give an account for those things. I promise you. It's not just so much of what we have done. It's what we did not do that we know that we should have done and we didn't do. We'll give an account for that one day. Just like if I see somebody down the road here, regardless whether I like them or not, and they've been involved in a major accident, if I don't stop and help that person towards being a good Samaritan, God will hold me accountable for me not helping that person, even if it wasn't nothing no more than picking up a telephone and calling 911. God will hold me accountable for not helping that person. And that's the part that I haven't never been able to sink in with the elders of the community around here, those that basically have one foot in a grave and another one in a grave in a casket. 1 foot in a grave and another one in a casket. In other words, they're on a slippery slope that any day that they could basically perish themselves because of old age or whatever. But I think God has allowed for these people to live for a reason. And it wasn't so that I could infuriate them, intimidate them, or judge them. Because I ain't going to judge them. It's going to be God Almighty that's going to judge all of us. Including me. Including me. It's gotten serious. And people in the community and people like Donald Trump need to take it serious. Whenever you have a governor that's doing this, it has become serious.
We're seeing coronavirus, Westchester County.
Let's back it up a little bit so we can get what she's saying.
He said that he can't really tell people not to leave this zone. He can't contain people. It has to be more about the gatherings. So that's the effort right there, is to just shut down basically where people could go to in this town in order to try to keep it within the town's borders. But
once more, what did Jesus say? Jesus said to flee into the mountains.
Movement in and out of this zone.
Jesus said to flee into the mountains whenever you shall see these things coming about. Why was he telling us to flee into the mountains? For various reasons. And all of them are just as true as each other. For one reason, get out of the low-lying areas, pertaining to areas that's going to have more of a tendency to flood, because God could foresee what mankind was going to be doing to the planet as far as disrupting the natural resources and the recourses of this ozone, and causing these problems to come upon to society the way that they are, pertaining to the oceans flooding and the ice melting. Okay. Also, I believe that God was speaking to the people pertaining to fleeing to the mountains to get out of those highly populated areas, because it's going to be more crazier in those highly populated areas. I just got to see in the news article where they just got to landing a ship over in Oakland, California, of a bunch of people that's got the coronavirus. Now, can they sustain and keep that virus under lock and key by opening up and allowing for that ship to come on to the port there in Oakland, California, which is right there in San Diego, California, where the Golden Gate Bridge is, which is right pretty close to Sacramento, California, where the capital is? Can they sustain that disease that's up there? Good luck to them is all I got to say. Because once this thing becomes airborne, then it does become a pandemic. Once it becomes airborne, and just the mere fact of the ship coming that close to the water's edge could have been just a daunting opening up, a daunting deal towards now people in the Sacramento and the San Francisco area will start getting sick. I pray to God that not be the case. But once more, let's not deviate from what I'm trying to get a message here to the general public. This has become serious, and we need our chief and commander. We need good leadership right now of people that can advise us and tell us what we should and should not be doing, including the president of the free world. That's what we need. We don't need no hokey pokey. We don't need no malarkey. We don't need some sort of ideology coming out of somebody that's trying to win another election pertaining to calling everything a hoax. Because this is not a hoax. When you see people dying, when you have over 60 million people that has just been quarantined in another country, this is not a hoax.
How do they enforce this restriction zone? Again, he said
they'll do it with the long arm of the gun if they have to. That's how they'll do it. They'll maintain law and order, shoot and ask questions later if it gets this far out of hand. That's how they'll do it, young lady. We will be forcibly forced to have to stay in our homes or suffer the consequences towards being shot like a dog out on the streets. Because once we fall into martial law, that's a completely different atmosphere than the atmosphere that the American people has been subjected and used to. That's right. If they go to rounding people up and putting them in camps, death camps, because of this, there won't be nothing that we can do other than follow suit and do what we are ordered to do. And if you catch the disease, there won't be nothing you can do other than grin and bear it, and hopefully your system will be strong enough to throw it off. Or the worst case scenario, you'll die. There's no way of sugarcoating this message. I wish it was. I wish there was some way that I could Joe Osteen this message. But there's no way of Joe Osteening this message. And that's the part I think that Donald Trump don't understand. It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed on the level that it needs to be addressed on.
said that he can't really tell people not to leave this zone. He can't contain people. It has to be more about the gatherings. So that's the effort right there, is to just shut down basically where people could go to in this town in order to try to keep it within the town's borders. But of course, it's not just this town where we're seeing coronavirus. Westchester County has a large number of cases. That's very concerning to the governor. So this is just one step in the effort, and they're going to bring a testing facility for that town as well. So it's really, let's see if this works. But this is definitely the first step and a very drastic step. We haven't seen this at all in the United States as of yet.
Right, indeed. Bryn Gingras, thanks very much for bringing us that breaking news. New York State, as Bryn was reporting, they're deploying the National Guard in order to help manage this coronavirus outbreak. And in New York and in the United States, to help manage. Bryn was reporting they're deploying the National Guard in order to help manage this coronavirus. Reporting they're deploying the National Guard in order to help manage this coronavirus outbreak. And in New York and in the United States as a whole, you have to remember there are far fewer cases than a country like Italy. Pier Paolo Soleri is Italy's deputy health minister. He joins me now from Rome. Thank you, sir, for joining us. If you can hear me, how do you enforce this lockdown, these restrictions on gatherings, weddings, cafes and restaurants having to close at 6 p.m.? How is this enforced? Are people compliant?
You hope that people will comply on a volunteer level to hold down any type of force. But you know, as crazy as the people are over here in America towards thinking they're above and beyond the rules of the law, you're going to have certain individuals that aren't even going to abide by some sort of restraint, even if it's coming from the United States military. The United States military will be ordered, if it's under certain guidelines pertaining to martial law, they will be ordered to shoot and ask questions later. Something this severe is never to be taken lightly, especially if it's reaching this level of desperateness, this level of crucialness, this level of severity. You know, I was really upset last night because I ate at a Mexican restaurant in Union City. Food was great. Service was great. Atmosphere was tremendous pertaining to all the stuff that they had hanging and dangling in there. But I kept noticing this table right next to me that had this young boy, give or take about maybe 6, 7 years old. His sister was sitting opposite from him, which was give or take about maybe 10 or 12, maybe 13. Looked like another sister and the mama sitting there. And of course the boy kept picking at the girl kept picking at the boy, till finally I noticed the boy get up and walk completely around the table and spit on his sister. And he had a full mouthful of food. Spit on her. At that point in time, I go, no, that ain't right. Because he assaulted his sister by spitting on her. The mother naturally grabbed up the boy and took him outside, and I'm pretty sure wore his little hiney out because of him doing what he done. But in my era, to have spit on somebody like that would have basically been a death sentence. Because it's the same thing if you double up your fist and you try to punch somebody's lights out. A matter of fact, if you spit on a police officer, that's the same thing as hitting a police officer. It is considered an assault. But in today's society over here in America, do you think that our children has been taught that? No. Not at all. They think that they can do whatever that they want to do in any form that they want to do it in, and there's not going to be severe consequences for doing it. Just like that little boy that spit on his sister and spit food all over in the center of a dining room, sitting there eating while there was probably, give or take, about 45 or 50 people surrounding in that area. The point that I'm trying to make is kids today don't have no respect for the law. They don't have no respect for themselves. They don't have no respect for each other. And these are the occurrences that our police officers have to face on a day-to-day level. And these will also be the same occurrences that our military will have to face on a day-to-day level, providing that martial law is ever called out onto the streets. You got nothing more than idiots that have been trained to ignore the severity of the law. They think the law is a joke. They think discipline coming from a parent is wrong. They are twisted. They are upside down. They don't know right from wrong. Just like that little boy. I actually felt sorry for him because I could tell by watching him afterwards. I paid a little bit closer attention. I never said nothing. It wasn't my place to say nothing. But I could tell that the little boy had some sort of disorder. I don't know if it was a mental disorder. I don't know if it was a some sort of a nerve disorder. But you could tell by the things that the little boy was doing and saying and how he was reacting. God, if my brothers and I would have ever reacted and responded that way in a public domain, in a public restaurant, we would have never been allowed to have went to a public restaurant or an open domain again. Ever. If we would have acted even half that crazy as that little boy was acting last night in a nice, fine restaurant. We're not talking about no rinky-dink hamburger joint. We're talking about a nice, fine restaurant. No, it wasn't no suit and tie type restaurant, but it was a nice, casual restaurant. Why does kids want to lash out and respond this way? Because they have not had proper discipline. They have not had proper training. They do not respect their elders. They do not respect the authorities. But if this gets out as bad as what I'm thinking that it is pertaining to the corona pandemic, in which now, if you'll take notice, just within the past 48 hours, CNN has changed their criteria. And they're no longer calling this a disease or a virus. They are now calling it a pandemic, which means that it is spreading. It has went airborne. Or the next thing to airborne. It is spreading. It is expelling. It is evolving. It is growing. It is intensifying. That's the part that Donald Trump don't understand. Please listen to the rest of this, and then I'm going to let you go.
Give us a heads up, please, for the Mississippi.
If you can hear me, Mr. Saleri, can you hear me? This is Halagarani in London.
Yes.
Oh, good. How is this being enforced?
Yes,
Are people complying with these restrictions? They're very drastic restrictions. How is it working for your country now?
I mean, they are complying with that, and there is a difference between the north, where all these indications were done few days ago, and now in the center and the south. But I'm in Rome right now, and to be honest with you, people are following our indications, and everything is okay in Rome. I believe even the other cities in Italy is going much better day by day, because we are informing and we are telling and we are suggesting and explaining what's going on, and people are very responsible with this.
Yeah, and the president of the Lombardy region, Attilio Fontana, says although this is a necessary step, he believes this is still insufficient, that there have to be more restrictions even. Do you agree? Why or why not?
I understand what Fontana is saying, because Lombardia is the area that is the major outbreak of this virus. So I can understand what he's saying. He wants to shut down everything. But right now, we believe that what we have done in Italy with the entire area of red area I think will be more than enough. But we need to see the new data coming from Lombardy, and in a few minutes we will have the new data, and I will check. Obviously the data tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and then we will decide all together if more is needed there.
But your big issue in Italy, and it will be the case possibly in other European countries, is the health service, the hospitals. We're seeing really very, tragic images coming to us from northern Italy hospitals. In fact, one of the top health officials in Lombardia said it is one step away from collapse even. What are your plans in case there is a collapse of the system?
Obviously, the number of the admissions in Lombardy and the region close to Lombardia was very, very high, and obviously the health system is under pressure. We are increasing the number in ICU, the number of beds, the number of ventilatory machines to give maximum support to our doctors. But I want to tell you something. I mean, this is not a problem of Italy. It's obviously it's a problem of the north part of Italy and probably the entire Italy, where we are doing all these measures to mitigate the virus diffusion. But as you can see from the map, there are a lot of cases in France, in Germany, and are growing in UK. I mean, this is a European country problem. It's not just something that started in Italy, and probably
No, quite, but you have the highest number right now.
Was not in Italy.
No, absolutely.
We have.
But let me ask you about the travel restriction. Yeah. Sorry, to jump in, but many people are asking me and asking, others around the world with regards to Italy. What if someone, a tourist who is not Italian, is inside Italy right now? What should they do?
But right now, obviously, I will not suggest travels in Italy. Obviously, we shut down the entire country, and we did reduce everything here. So I believe the best thing to do is stay at home, unless you have to do a travel for job or I don't know, for health problems or whatever. I will not travel. Obviously.
You would advise people considering travel to Italy not to go ahead with their plans?
Not right now, to be honest.
Yeah. And people who are in Italy
I don't know
right
for
now?
how long. I will. I believe right now is. It's much better to avoid travels, even because if you come, you will find museums that are closed. You cannot go to the restaurant. I mean, we are living in a particular moment where everything is closed basically, and probably we may need to increase all this over the next few weeks if this doesn't work. I mean, and I believe also the other countries in Europe will do or should do the same. So right now I will not suggest a travel to Italy.
What is your worst fear right now? You're the deputy health minister at a time of great crisis for your country. When you think of the worst fear that you have, what is it at this stage?
Sorry, I cannot hear you very well right now. Can you repeat?
What is now the worst fear for your country? If you
Survival.
Look at what could go wrong? You're the deputy health minister, and it's a time of great crisis for your country.
Yeah, I got it. I think the major fear is try to guarantee the best health service for all our patients, not only for patients with the coronavirus that are increasing in the north, and we'll see if our measures will stop it in the central and south part of Italy, but we need to give health also to other diseases. So, for example, if we have hospitals full of coronavirus in our ICU, then I believe an heart attack or brain hemorrhage or other disease needs to be treated too. So our fear and our efforts should be to increase our potential all over in Italy to avoid that somebody cannot be treated.
We really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are. Pier Paolo Soleri, the Deputy Health Minister in Italy. We wish you the best of luck during this great challenge.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't know if I can add only. Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Oh, perfect. I want just to stress the fact that this is a European problem, probably a world problem, and I invite everyone to read an editorial on Lancet a few days ago, and the title is China against coronavirus, too little, too late, and they conclude that measures to fight against coronavirus should be very, very strong, including what we are doing now. So I hope that our experience and the Chinese experience and our experience may be an example to the other to take the same measures, and we believe that this is the only way to mitigate the diffusion of this virus and avoid stress of national systems. So thank you very much for your attention and for your time.
Absolutely, and thank you for laying out the strategy in Italy. Pier Paolo Soleri.
That was the authority figure talking from Italy, the Department of Minister of Health, that was talking about the severity of how severe things are over there, and it is it's crucial. It's crucial because you're talking about the survival of your people, the survival of your citizens, and your health should be the first and foremost thing that you think about, beyond politics or beyond groups pertaining to whether or not you're with the Republicans or the Democrats. This should be a time for everybody to come together as a global entity to prepare for this, and hopefully this thing will not evolve and escalate into something that we have been known of historically reading or studying about, of other pandemics that have basically put societies to their knees, cultures to their knees, pertaining to a microscopic germ that is a billionth the size of a human being, that can literally get into your respiratory or get into your blood and cause death and despair. This is not something that you play with. This is almost like playing with TNT. If the truth be known, it may actually be worse than TNT. It may be worse than any type of nuclear bomb that's ever been created, because it works in silence. It works in basically a form of invisibleness. You can't see it with the human eye. You can't smell it. You can't touch it. You can't hear it. You can't even feel it whenever you first become attacked by it. But then a few weeks later, all of a sudden you have the symptoms. And then we see the consequences on its behavior. We have reached a pivotal time here in America to where it needs to be addressed on the same level that the governor of New York is addressing this. That's my belief. It didn't cost you nothing. It's my opinion. I've got a right to my opinion. And if people don't like my opinion, that's fine too.
Strategy in Italy. Pier Paolo Soleri, thank you. And back to the U.S. now. Right now, at least 773 cases of the novel coronavirus are reported across dozens of U.S. cities, schools, and universities. Are closing and businesses are implementing alternative work arrangements. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar spoke to CNN today.
I would encourage any individual who is elderly or is medically fragile to think long and hard about going into any large gathering that would involve close quarters and potential spread.
Well, the coronavirus is upending daily life for millions of people around the world, and each nation is responding in their own way. So what are they doing? What can we expect? Who's got potentially the most effective approach? Dr. Margaret Harris is spokeswoman for the World Health Organization. Dr. Harris, I don't know if you had an opportunity to hear my interview with the Deputy Health Minister of Italy, Mr. Sileri, who basically was saying that the approach, the very strong, strict, kind of widespread approach that Italy is using, is the one he believes that other European countries should also be using to really mitigate as much as possible the effects of this virus. Do you agree?
Good evening, Howard. Social distancing, which is really like anti-social distancing, because that's keeping people apart, works. It's not easy, it's not fun, but it has been shown to be effective. It's extraordinary how quickly the numbers are coming down in China. This morning I was looking at a row of noughts in many of the provinces of China. They're not out of the woods yet, but what they've done there, difficult as it was, difficult for China and difficult for the people to do, has achieved what we hope can be achieved in other countries.
So this brings me to my next question, and then we'll get to the rate of progression in a minute. But yesterday, UK health authorities essentially said they didn't believe necessarily that limiting mass gatherings was the most effective way to combat the spread in the same way that Italy has done or China. Would you disagree with them?
So each country looks at their outbreak and looks at where they are. If you have what's called a cluster, that means an outbreak that's clearly been spread by an individual or a couple of individuals, and you've got eyes on where the virus is. You know all the people who are in contact, and you've got a very clear means of isolating them, and you've got good commitment by the community to do that. Then you still are in a position where you can contain that virus. Ideally, also, you get community commitment to avoid large gatherings. So yes, you start looking at what events you can postpone or not hold, some of the decisions about not holding church services and so on. The Pope led by example in Italy. Can you do things? Can you do telemedicine? Can you call ahead to your doctor and see if you absolutely have to go in that week? All these other strategies should be employed as well.
All right, but not necessarily the case right now, at least in countries like the UK. Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, gave us a good explainer about the rate of progression of this particular coronavirus versus, for instance, H1N1 in particular in 2009. This is what he told our viewers just a few hours ago.
Just follow this graphic out. You're looking at Ebola, the coronavirus, and H1N1. You can see how there was a flattened sort of curve when it came to coronavirus until this point here, where suddenly it got to the 9-week mark and there were a lot of coronavirus cases. But take a look what happens to H1N1. All of a sudden, it just spirals up, and by the end of the first year, there was 60 million cases.
All right. Is that a concern for you that we might see with coronavirus what we saw with what was called the swine flu in 2009, this giant spike all of a sudden?
Well, so far, and of course our experience really is mostly China, because they managed to flatten their curve early. So yes, they started with slow curve, then it went up, and it looked like it was going to go exponential and go into that big spike and keep going. But they took measures there, and that's where they flattened it, and that's where it came down. So that's why our mission that went in there came back really awe-inspired, having seen that, yes, despite a massive outbreak, they were able to reverse it. And so that's why we're saying this one's, it looks like the flu quite often in some of the ways it spreads, and yet it's stoppable. So the flu, exactly as Dr. Gupta said, just goes, choom. But this one is stoppable. It's really in our hands.
There was some criticism, though, of China and even of the World Health Organization early on that this wasn't dealt with as seriously as it should have from the beginning. Do you accept that criticism?
get reports of outbreaks every day. So, but certainly when we heard about this one, we heard about a cluster of cases of pneumonia around a live animal market, and 31st of December, and there were enough problematic issues there to raise the alarm and raise the signals, and we had a team working over New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. There's always sort of criticism, and honestly, criticism is great. We're a scientific organization. We need criticism to do better.
Exactly.
But I think actually people worked incredibly hard. They identified the virus very early, within a couple of weeks. They put the genome out there for the world to see, got the test. So this is actually unprecedented in human history. This has been a better response. I'm not saying WHO, I'm saying the whole world has really responded a great deal better than we ever have before.
Right.
All right, Dr. Margaret Harris, thanks for joining us from Geneva. So to come tonight, beaten, stripped, hit with water cannon and tear gas. Well, thousands of migrants are waiting at Greece's doorstep, and Turkey says Greece.
Well, there you have it, folks. Coming straight out of the horse's mouth, pertaining to the seriousness of all this. You can take your own precautions that I advise and have been advising from day one since I first seen this, and God showed it to me that it was going to be severe, towards you taking your own precautions in your own way, regardless whether it's stocking up on food or not going to large gatherings right now. You can use your own judgment, but my advice would be to take this serious. This is not something that you play with. This is not Hollywood. This is the real deal. This can lethally kill you. The same thing as walking out in front of an 18-wheeler or jumping off of a building or drinking poison or sticking a loaded gun to your head and pulling the trigger. It can kill you. So please, by all means, take these measures seriously. And good luck to all of us. And shalom.